When we aren't talking about relegation or bad managers or defensive displays or pass completion stats or will still continuously for some reason, we're usually talking about the summer. And that's because whatever happens at the end of this season, the summer is going to be huge. It's going to be pivotal and it's going to be busy. There is a lot of things that are going to be happening this summer from a lot of different angles. And so it generates, obviously, a lot of conversation. It also tends to generate quite a lot of articles, one of which was in the Standard today, where Malik Weezer, I believe is how you pronounce your name. I apologise if I got that wrong. Mr. Malik, if you see this, I apologise. Who writes, West Ham identify Conor Gallagher and Kalvin Phillips as Declan Rice replacement. Because that's the big one, isn't it? Because we can talk about all of these other ins and outs and potential leavings and potential losses and potential games and all this other thing. The most guaranteed thing we can probably say is Declan Rice is going to leave. We suspect. I mean, there are obviously people coming to the end of their contracts and that's going to be a big old upheaval. In the terms of ones we can control, Declan Rice is probably the most likely person to be leaving and is the biggest problem for West Ham in terms of replacement as well. Because, you know, let's take the argument of Scamacca and Paqueta, right? Who are both people who are rumoured to be off. We'll get to that, but I don't believe either of those to be leaving, by the way. But for sake of argument, they've come in and they've not made huge, massive impacts. This is our captain. This is our most valuable player, and it's our most important player for the last 3 seasons at this point, maybe more. Replacing him is going to be a monumental task. And so it's kind of nice that we're starting to get rumours now about replacing him. I would prefer them a little bit earlier, if we're being honest, because to be honest with you, we should know already who we're going to go and try and get. Secondly, neither of those two are particularly inspiring options, which we'll get onto as well. However, it's nice at least that we're thinking slightly ahead, given the fact he's going, it's happening, he's off, right? We talk in this article, for example, the Hammers have been long-term admirers of the England duo and their situations are being monitored, with both facing uncertain futures at their current club. The pair are on a short list of leading contenders to replace Rice, who will be sold at the end of the season as he effectively enters the final 2 years of his contract, having turned down several offers of a lucrative new deal. When it comes to the specifics of these two, they're both great footballers, right? At least Conor Gallagher's a great footballer currently. I don't know if Kalvin Phillips is a great footballer at the moment. I've basically not seen him play since he moved to Manchester City. I think he's at 65 minutes of Premier League football. I think that's something the article mentions. I mean, he played against us briefly, and like outside of that, I don't know another Premier League game he's played, and he's barely played in the Cup. He's obviously had a huge injury, and that's one of the big concerns. When you're talking about Kalvin Phillips coming to West Ham in what would undoubtedly be a big money transfer, his injury record is obviously a huge issue because we don't want to buy someone who's got that big of an injury record. We tend to do it all of the time. It never goes right. And when you're looking to replace someone who has been ever present, because you're not just replacing someone who is the best player at West Ham, although he is, you're also replacing someone who is in that team every single game, almost without fail. He's very rarely injured. You cannot, in my opinion, replace him with someone who has a dodgy injury record. I'm not willing to write off Phillips just yet. I'm not willing to say, nah, he's a Kieran Dyer, we can't get him. I'm not willing to do that yet. But his injury record does need to be noted because it is not good whatsoever. Then you come to the argument of stylistically replacing him, right? And does Kalvin Phillips fit that? I guess he kind of does. But both these players kind of do and also kind of don't at the same time. And this is when another angle of replacing Declan Rice comes into play, because we might not be looking for someone who is a direct 1-for-1 replacement. Because realistically, we might want to change up the way our midfield works. Maybe we say Flynn Downs is a guy who's going to sit just in front of the back line, and maybe we're looking for someone who's going to, utilise Declan Rice's more box-to-box abilities. So if we're looking for someone who's more box-to-box out of, say, these two people again, Conor Gallagher is the guy. You get Conor Gallagher as opposed to Kalvin Phillips if that's the side of Declan Rice you want to replace instead of the defensive side, which is what we could be going for, in which case you'd probably want Kalvin Phillips out of the two of them, even though again Kalvin Phillips not a I don't know, personally I've never been enamoured by his defensive qualities. What I like about him is his ball playing abilities. I've sort of liked his controlling of the game, the tempo he brings, and his passing range I quite like, which is something again Declan Rice has. But that defensive quality of just sitting in front of the line, the thing I think Declan Rice is, by the way, by far the best at, is just that sitting and stopping. anticipation, stopping things from happening. He's so good at that. And so if you're looking in that case, do either of these two really fit? If that's the side of Declan Rice you want to place, arguably more Kalvin Phillips, but again, arguably neither of them massively so. But it all depends on the makeup of the midfield, right? Because again, you could have Conor, you could have Flynn Downs in that position. You might have Paqueta on one side. Maybe if you're playing a free, maybe you put Souček there. I know you don't want to say that, but hey, look, we're here now. Maybe you want to put Lanzini there. Maybe you want to put Fornals there. Maybe you want to put a new guy there. Maybe there's lots of different makeups of ways you can move this midfield around. And so replacing Declan Rice might not need to be this one-to-one thing we're all thinking of. Who's the perfect replacement? Then there's the financial situation. How much money are we going to get from Declan Rice? You'd imagine, hope, that it's going to be a lot, right? You need a lot to replace Declan Rice. That's not something we can just do willy-nilly. You know, the numbers being bound around, I've always thought of unrealistic. I've always thought the ceiling for Declan Rice would be 100 million and we would be incredibly lucky in the perfect circumstances to get that. And after this season, I'm highly doubtful that's even remotely possible. I think a more realistic figure for Declan Rice is probably somewhere between 70 and 80 million. And even then, I think 80 million's maybe pushing it a bit. Which then asks the question, how much would these people be? Because the key to selling Declan Rice, in my mind, is not replacing him. The key to selling Declan Rice is what you do with that money to add to the squad. Because the whole point of having someone in your team who is so good and worth so much money is that when you sell them, not only do you replace them, but you also can add to it. I know I'm gonna mention Gareth Bale and everyone's gonna go, oh, but those signings didn't work out. They did, but just not in the way you're thinking of, right? They added value to the squad. A couple of those worked out, which is all you need. They bought however many players they bought with it. 3 of those work out. Golden, the others, they can sell for good profit and all of a sudden they've got a much more valuable squad and look where Tottenham go from there. I'm not saying that Gareth Bale selling Gareth Bale pushed them to a Champions League final. Equally, I'm not saying that selling Declan Rice is going to push us to where Spurs went, but it is a huge opportunity to jump forward even if all of those signings don't work out. So do you actually want to spend 40, 50 million on Conor Gallagher? Because Conor Gallagher's probably going to leave. I mean, both of those people you would suspect are leaving. You know, you've got European tournaments. Is it the World Cup or is it Euros? Whichever one it is. It's World Cup, Euros. I don't care. I really don't matter. Whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is, in 2024, there's an England tournament. Both of these people are going to want to be in contention for this team, right? Can't believe I can't remember that. It's just gone out of my head. So both of them are going to want to leave, but also both of them are at clubs where they can afford to just, you know, ask basically whatever they want. Let's say you're spending 50 million on one of those two players, right? Which is probably an unrealistic figure. That's probably a bit too high, but Conor Gallagher's probably going to go for quite a lot of money. Kalvin Phillips, you'd argue, probably slightly less than Conor Gallagher because one, he's 27, which isn't old, but certainly not. He's in his prime. Like he's not a youngster, you know. But obviously his injury record's slightly lesser as well, so you'd probably go for slightly less. But let's just pick up 40 to 50 million as a figure. Is it smart to spend that much money on it? Where, say, if we get 80 million, that's half of it? Or do you go for someone who's a little bit cheaper, who's still very good and still has a lot of good qualities and can maybe improve the balance of the midfield? You know, maybe you're looking at a midfield free of Flynn Downs, a new person, and Paqueta. Maybe you're looking at a new person, Paqueta and Fornals. It could maybe improve the balance of that and then hold a bit more money back where you can spend it on fullbacks, which we desperately need. We're probably going to need another centre-back because it seems like, I think Bonner's coming to the end of his contract. I don't remember. Don't quote me on that. We've got a bunch of people coming to the end of contracts. Fabianski, I think, was another one who seems to be staying now. Cresswell was another one who I think might be staying. There's a lot of contracts coming to an end. Personally, maybe you look at someone like, off the top of my head, maybe you look at Romeo Lavia, right? He's probably going to go down with Southampton. Maybe, maybe not. If he goes down with Southampton, you could probably get him for significantly cheaper. He looks really good. He looks really good. He's younger. There's obviously more risk in that with him keeping up the performances. He's not established, but if you get someone who's not established, get him for cheaper, works out better in the long term, you can make bigger profit on them down the line and also get a bunch of other players to improve your team. Maybe you should go that way as opposed to looking sort of blinkers on at Kalvin Phillips and Conor Gallagher. But ultimately, when we talk about all of these different angles of which this could go down, the final matter is We don't know who the manager is going to be. We don't know what system they're going to play. We don't know what players they're going to prefer playing. We don't know necessarily who the ownership are going to be. We don't know how much money Declan Rice is going to go for. There are so many things that are going to happen this summer which will dictate how this plays out, that talking about it now is almost superfluous. But I feel like it's an interesting conversation anyway, because I think at this point, we're all sort of collectively as a fan base in the realistic mindset that Declan Rice is on his way out. Who do we replace him with? And that's where I come to you. I want to know who you think we should replace Declan Rice with. Because like I said, my first choice is probably Romeo Lavia, but also I'm self-aware enough to know that that's also, you know, I did it on Football Manager, it worked out. That's probably where my brain's going with it. But it makes sense to me when you think about it from a realistic standpoint as opposed to a Football Manager standpoint. Who is that guy? How much money do you spend on him? You know, do you put all of the money back into it? Do you go a bit here, a bit there? What kind of approach are you looking for? Are you looking for an established guy who can come and make it happen straight away? Are you looking for a younger guy? What's your vibe? Give me names. Because as I was sitting here and I was thinking, right, this is the video I'm going to do, and, you know, double sort of checking, making sure the article was real. It's not just something I saw posted on Twitter earlier or whatever. I was thinking of names and I couldn't really come up with many off the top of my head that were realistic. And I feel like my football knowledge is waning a bit. So I'm coming to the collective consciousness of the Hammers Chat subscribers to try and figure out who that guy is. Who knows? Who knows? Let me know. Patreon.com/Hammers Chat is the thing you should definitely check out, by the way. Hammerlytics, the show I do with Jack Elderton off of Analytics United, will be going up on there. Probably later tonight, where we'll be discussing the Fulham result and potentially this as well. I don't know the running order yet, but we might talk about it, among other things, as well as Two Spanners, One Ham, which is the other podcast I do on there. That'll be going up tomorrow. That'll be live at 8 p.m. The preview will be up tomorrow for everyone. That's ignore that Patreon nonsense. He will be up for everyone tomorrow. It should have been today. Me and Gonzo, we couldn't figure it out. Gio's away and can't do stuff today, so it's going to be me and Gonzo tomorrow. We'll figure that out as well, but that'll be tomorrow at 5 p.m. That's everything I need to say, I think. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the update. Anyway, that's the update. Conor Gallagher, Kalvin Phillips. What's the vibe? I don't know. Hope you enjoyed the show. I don't know why I said it like that. Enjoy yourselves. Come on, you irons. We'll see you next time. I need to get better at outros. I really need to get better. Just CBB's wave. Bye, everyone. Bye.